Guys, you ready?
Sure.
All right, well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Tuesday, August 9th City Council meeting. We are going to be looking at budget time. We have a great audience out here tonight. They're all thrilled with about being here. So at this time, I will call the meeting to order, and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I thought Glenn was going to fall and you wouldn't wait for him. What's that? I thought you were going to fall and he wouldn't wait for it. He had to hurry up. Okay, Shelley, would you like to do roll call for us, please?
I can. Albertson,
Here.
Bueller,
Here.
Danforth,
Here.
Manti, Riefenberger,
Here.
Roby absent, Solom,
Here.
Thorson,
Here.
Tupper,
Here.
Vilhauer.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I'll look for a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Motion by Bruce, second by Randy. Any questions? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number 2, presentation, review, and public input on the mayor's proposed 2016 city budget. And Shelley, I'm going to just turn this ship over to you at this time. Yeah, it should be, it's 2017.
Yep, should be.
Perfect.
Well, you know, I kind of say that my life is I spend half of the year in last year. I spend the next half year and next year. So, you know, eventually I just want to be in this year. So can't fault me for that. Okay, just a couple things before we get started. The proposed budget book is on the city website. We also have a counter copy, and we always have an extra copy. If anybody from the public would ever want to come and view it. The layout of the book, the first part is just a quick letter, really high-level overview of the 2017 budget and the process that we had gone through so far. The second part is the revenue section, and that basically shows a summary of the expenditures and then a detailed revenue for each fund. It's the only place you're going to find that. The third part of the budget is what we call the word pages, and then the detailed expenditures. It is not in fund form. It is in the order of what the departments are going to come and present. Last year we had a few, I won't say complaints, but you know, the jumping back and forth in the book. So this year we're going to try something different. You'll have to let me know if you like it, don't like it. So now you can just turn the page and it's in the order that the presentation is going to happen. Okay? Some housekeeping points. We will be done at 9:30, whether you're ready to be done or not. We have another long night tomorrow night. And the longer these go, kind of the less effective they seem to be, or productive maybe I should say. So we're going to try to get out of here at 9:30. Each department is going to come up and spend about 5 minutes going over their 2017 budget requests, and then they're going to kind of let you know how those requests help them accomplish their short and long-term goals. Those goals are listed on the word pages if you've looked those over. I want to make sure that any questions and concerns you guys have get addressed. So if you have questions prepared, please listen to everybody's questions, listen to the answers so we don't double up. Also, let the department heads finish their presentation before we start the questioning to kind of keep things from getting derailed, so to speak. Also, if there's anybody from the audience who wants to get up and say anything, ask any questions, this is a public meeting. Welcome to participate. Also, please keep the questions to the 2017 budget year. We'll go through the long-term CIP. That'll be August 22nd. So right now, we're just really focusing on next year's budget cycle. So does anybody have any questions on any of that information? Okay. The first department, if you want to turn to the tab that says budgets, the first one is the BBB, which is bedboard booze sales tax. That is basically our third penny sales tax. It is restricted by state statute, as you can kind of see, for only certain things. I'm going to have Megan from the chamber come up first. She has another engagement at 6:30, so we're going to try to get her in and out of here so she can make her next appointment. And then I will turn the floor over to her, and she can do her presentation, and then any questions that you guys have, you can ask at that time.
Perfect. Well, good evening. I'm glad I'm the show starter and not at the end tomorrow when everybody has that dazed and drained look. So, we are excited where the Chamber of Commerce is at currently, where we are headed. I can report today that we are at an all-time membership high in our history. We are signing up anywhere from 6 to 12 new members every month, which is fantastic. That's good for our organization, but more importantly, it's good for our community as a whole. That means we're headed in the right direction with the things that we're seeing on the horizon for 2017, 2018, the growth we're seeing in the community. You know, we have some mountains to move, we realize that, but I think we are definitely headed in the right direction. So, are we up here? We'll just jump right into the line items that pertain to the Chamber of Commerce. And traditionally, back in 2013, a little history, it used to be divided, our subsidy used to be divided out into these different areas. How that works is we place an ad, we keep a copy of the ad, and would bill the city back for it. Worked with the finance office, fine-tuned that so it worked a little bit better on Shelley's end, worked a little bit better with our accounting services. And this year we are going back in some of these line items and breaking them out just a little bit more specifically. So $10,000 into the 4th of July. Of course, those are added dollars that we had requested to the mayor's office. Seeing what we did in 4 short weeks last time, just think of what we can pull off with a year's time of planning and the resources. Signs and billboards, $10,000 for that area. Christmas decorations, I think we were taking the word Christmas off of that just to be more specific to decorations, i.e. banners specifically, repair and or possibly looking at some new banners. The mayor's ad campaign, those are the dollars that are allocated to things like the holiday promotion, shop local campaign, welcoming neighboring communities, some of that 60-mile radius that we like to target during the holiday season. The Chamber of Commerce line item, which is here, that $40,000, that goes into promoting those other projects, Watertown marketing, making sure that we're on the map, making sure we look like a progressive community, doing things to promote things like the downtown. Right now, that's a buzz, putting some dollars into those types of ad campaigns. So pretty straightforward from what we've asked for, requested in the years past, a little bit of an increase, hoping with the 4th of July. We do have plans for a digital platform, creating an app. Actually going to have a customer service reporting system on there. So if folks are out, they have great service at one of our area businesses or restaurants. So we can get that real time and turn around and kick that back out. And that goes on the opposite side too. If they have a gripe or maybe a concern, we can turn around and get that real time back to business owners to try to create a wonderful experience for folks. So I think that's pretty straightforward. I would entertain any questions.
The only question I have is, as I've looked through here, and I don't know if it's a typo, if I'm just misreading this constantly, but when I read that the department description, it says it's not to be used for staffing, operation of such facility, and the promotion and advertising of the city, but that last part, the promotion and advertising of the city, is what we're doing with a lot of this, correct? The description?
The BBB?
Yeah.
Right.
I'm talking about the whole fund here, the whole area. It's just I don't know if I'm misreading this the way it is, or...
No, the purpose of this fund is to account for the revenues and expenditures of the 1% tax pursuant to codified law. The use of the revenue is restricted for land acquisition, architectural fees, construction costs, payment for civic center, auditoriums, athletic facilities, including the maintenance, staffing, and operations of such facilities and the promotion of the advertising of the city. And that's mainly so
The
that
for
we.
and from is where I kept writing
Oh,
that
okay.
as from.
Yep, yep, and mainly that's really kind of for the CVB, we can pay for salaries for those promotions.
And that is probably one thing that I should mention to folks, and I think everybody that's been on the council, and we've been through this process before, but none of these dollars that are allocated through the chamber are used for staff, rent, any operations whatsoever. Everything that the city says here, go and use this, I can turn around and show you a radio ad or a billboard or a newspaper ad, and it goes right back into that. So you're not paying any of that operations overhead, anything. Those funds are coming out of our membership dues.
Yeah, I've always had problems with my M's. They just kind of disappear on me sometimes. But,
Tricky, since your name starts with an M.
The other thing, and this really wouldn't be for you so much, Megan, is
Good one.
I don't get very many chances to take a cheap shot at him.
you
That's
flustered
all
me because
right.
I thought you were
That's
coming here to
tricky.
say a prayer, but
Ooh, touche. Okay.
Anyway, and this is probably more for the mayor and Shelley, but as we talk about the subsidy to the Boys and Girls Club, and we talk about 17, is there how is that annual number determined today, as it is today, before we get to?
But I think, Mike, before we get into that, let's finish up with the chamber, and then
Oh, we're only
we
just
will
the
talk.
chamber.
Yeah,
Okay.
Just the chamber. Then we're going to go back. We'll talk to the CVB and all these, and we'll move down into that Boys and Girls Club.
Oh, okay.
Fair enough? Okay.
Glenn, did you have?
I've got one question, maybe it's a comment. It's not on here, but that reserve balance as of the end of 2015 is something like 267,000. As I understand it, as long as we meet the criteria in the description, that is up to us as far as how we want to use that, or if we ever want to use that reserve balance. Is that right, Shelley?
And that is on the BBB Reserve Fund is what you were talking about. Yep, absolutely.
Is there any other questions for Megan?
No, I'm excited to see what we'll do for the 4th of July.
Yes. And new holiday promotions coming too, so that'll be very cool.
Yeah, well-
Shelley, while I'm here, can we do the external organization? Can we jump ahead to the chamber on that one?
Yeah, yep, because that's the very next
Hit
page, so.
two birds with one stone, and then
Yep.
I will get out of your hair.
Yep,
So the other request that comes separate in your budget book is actually the $10,000 allocation that the mayor so generously has helped us out with over this will be the 4th year, going into the 4th year of Cooking on Compesca. That $10,000 we use strictly to put in for the Kansas City Barbecue prize purse, or the money that actually entices those teams. If you were at all able to join us at the festivities this year, we were busting at the seams, and that's a fantastic problem to have. We are definitely on the grow, and it's a wonderful event. It's really become a Watertown signature event, and so that's where that $10,000 comes in, and we're very appreciative of the mayor and the council supporting us with that.
anybody have any questions on that?
Just a follow-up comment, coming to this group from the Chamber Board, the Cooking on Campesca wouldn't happen the last years if it weren't for the support from the city.
That's
So
right.
it definitely is being put to good use.
All right.
Okay, thank
We
you so
will
much for
continue
being
to be
here.
good stewards of your money, and we are so glad that we have this partnership. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay. Since Julie is here, I think if you want to come up, we'll address the CVB. That's just one line item that, as you can see, and then she can gonna go through how that breaks out and what she has planned for the 2017 year, and then you guys can ask any questions at that point.
There, now it's on. I'll get the hang of this one of these days. Everybody needs to be nice. This is my first budget hearing, so. And I didn't even ask for any additional money this year, and I promised the mayor I would. So that's pretty notable. Well, in what I have made kind of my signature style, I've changed everything with my budget. So right down to all of the categories, line items, everything. So I'm not going to bore you with any of that. We had some reserve this year. We asked for the 272.7, which was last year's allocation as well. And then we had reserve funds of 44,750 that we'll be using, and then the bid board is going to contribute $17,000 to the CVB, which we look at that as kind of a stipend or whatever you want to say for all the work we do for them. They look at it on their line items as an advertising expense, so however it's written in there. In the categories here, and you just have to tell me if I'm going at this wrong or you want me to do it in a different order. The top line, we are happy to report that we are so busy. We meet each other coming and going. So we've got 2.5 staff right now, with Ashley sharing a staff member from the chamber. And so we plan to add another 20 hours, bringing on a full-timer possibly. Because the chamber is also growing quite rapidly, and I think that it's coming to the time where we kind of all need our own staff. Office expenses, I think that's a pretty close number to where we were last year. Professional development, that includes, we are going to bring on a CRM program, customer relationship management, a software program. And that will also include mass email marketing, and all of those will be integrated into our website so that there'll be a lot of automation. So when somebody requests a visitor guide or visitor information, an email will go out immediately to them thanking them for their interest in Watertown. It'll also be managed if people want to opt out, so we don't have to constantly be going in there manually and doing that. And then we will have an all-inclusive retainer, so anything we need to do from emails to newsletters, anything, we can have ClickRain help us with that. And there's some setup included in that, and the rest of it is more of a monthly fee for the email marketing and things like that, which 90% of everything that we put out that we track is mobile now. So we get an awful lot of, and I think when I made the presentation a couple of weeks ago, you saw how our numbers were looking, and Lawrence and Schiller actually made their analyst rerun them because they couldn't believe how good they were. So that expense that and the software is quite a bit, but I think that that's something that's almost like hiring a full-time person for a year, something we need. One big change I'm making is we really haven't been doing the marketing and the shows that we need to do. And so one of the biggest changes with the ball fields and the flat floor space and the sheets of ice that are coming, in 2016 there was $5,000 budgeted for travel shows. In 2017 I have $20,300 budgeted for travel shows. And I've broken down into my budget when I rearranged everything. So there's categories: conventions and meetings, hunting and fishing, sports, and leisure, art and culture. Out of that, the most of it is going to be spent for sports. We do have a show we're going to do in Denver for the first time, and then we'll do Pheasant Fest. We've only ever done hunting and fishing shows, so we're going to broaden our horizons and just assume that people other than hunters and fishermen want to come to South Dakota, and so far that's been a pretty good bet. So I think that's something we need to do. And then the local events, which are our posters and, our Facebook boosts and our regional stuff outside of maybe a 100-mile or driving range area into the states surrounding South Dakota. Other marketing would include just different, like the novelties that we give away. We're finding that a lot of the things we were giving away are just going into the garbage. And so we're trying to do some things like the can koozies and T-shirts and things like that, which are a little bit more expensive, but they're sustainable and people keep them and people wear them. And so I think that those are a little bit more expensive, but we need to do that. Another thing, we have all very outdated, very old, non-impressive trade show supplies. And so I am going to have trade shows supplies made for the different types of shows that we have that will be really attractive, nice-looking backdrops, maybe the floor-to-ceiling type stuff. I know John Solom has been with me at a couple shows, and we talked about some of the things that would be good to do. They charge you an absolute fortune for tables and chairs. I would say we probably spend $1,500 just for tables and chairs and stuff to set everything on, which if you do a couple of shows, you can pretty quickly pay for some really nice trade show supplies, and then we'll just have those shipped, or we'll take them along. The other thing is in regard to sports. I talked to Bruce Riefenberger one afternoon, and I'd like to get some kind of a kiosk type of a situation in the ball fields where we can put some of our information out. It's in a good spot where people can get at it. And maybe a little bit of storage under there. We just do an awful lot of hauling and stuffing of bags that people don't use. And just so we have a nice display, nice signage, welcoming visitors to Watertown. And then perhaps we can even maybe update a few of those in our attractions, or maybe, places like, the mall, or maybe uptown somewhere or whatever, so that when visitors come to town, they can see it, and it's a welcoming sign that really, the impression really needs to be good, so.
Julie, just an FYI, we are putting a new kiosk in at the new 5 complex.
I did hear that.
Okay.
Yep. So I think we have, we've got some ideas, and Bruce helped me a little bit with some ideas on the different fields that are, existing now. So anyway, that is where I'm at. Does anybody have any questions? I think we're heading in the right direction with the CVB. I think we just need to get out there and invite people to come and visit us.
I have a question, Julie. Just out of curiosity, the professional development, you got $18,000. What exactly are you doing in that regard?
Let me find that.
And your staff is about 2.5 people, is that correct?
2.5 people right now.
Okay,
Yep.
Okay.
The professional development is including the website development, the monthly retainer, that's all inclusive, the software setup, software monthly fee, and also the mass, they call it rain mail, email marketing, and then the monthly usage, and also the things that they will do for us is there's templates, and I just send her what I want, and she actually puts it all together, I proof it, and they send that out. And that, the only other way to do that is to hire somebody that's very tech savvy and really can do that in office. But it needs to coordinate with our website so that all that information gets dumped back into all the right places, so we can use that to market to people as well for different purposes. It's going to be kind of, they can turn on and off, kind of like your cell phone. You turn on what you need to use, but then you can grow because there's other features and options you can grow into.
So really, it's professional services development versus.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I think that clarifies.
Yep.
Okay,
Thanks.
Julie, with your 44,000 from reserve, how much did you have in reserve? Is that all of it or most of
No,
it?
that's, I think Shelley recommended that we keep a 6-month supply
Okay, but
of reserve on hand. So I
Okay.
think, what is there, $50,000 left in there approximately?
after taking this out?
Right.
Okay, so I just looking ahead, obviously, if you have to take that much out of reserve at some point in time, you're gonna be asking for more money or something's gonna change.
Right. Well, and that was just a recommendation, and I know we've talked about this before with reserve funds, that they're tax dollars, and so we really can't sit on them, because otherwise, if I can't find a project, which I think we have plenty of projects we can do, that then we just go backwards and get less, and I don't think where we're at right now. I think the return on investment for the visitor industry is way too big to go that direction, so I think there's not a lot of risk with what we're doing. So, we're pretty day-to-day operations and things like that. There's not a lot of risk, so. My goal is to run out of money and have to come back for more.
That's kind of what I was alluding to, actually, was that I
I
suspect
promised
that's
the
what's,
mayor I was
where
going
we're
to ask for a
going
lot of
here.
money this time around, and I disappointed myself, so.
No, but I was very pleased.
Were you?
Yes, thank you.
Well, you're welcome.
Is there
I-
any-
Well, I was just going to compliment you and say that I really feel like we're moving in a very positive direction. So, good job.
Thank
I
you.
would like to just mention quickly that Julie and I were in Fergus Falls on Friday and had an opportunity to visit with the Kiwanis group that is coming to Watertown next year. And they had kind of a small contingency there, maybe 150, 200 people, I would say. And what we're understanding is that we're going to be working that towards close to 400 or 500 people. So we're excited for that. And we only had 15 minutes to talk,
And he took all of the 15 minutes. I had 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Because he had to tell a story about donuts.
But then once she got done talking, I said, Julie, that's the longest 30 seconds I've ever sat through that you had. I did too. But it was really good. And I just want to say that it turned out very well, and I think it'll be a good show for us.
Yeah,
All
one
right.
thing I want to mention too that we're working really hard on. We've had a lot of interest in trying to get the spouses to come along to these conventions and meetings. And right now we're working on, there's so many interesting things that we can take people on tours. I mean, from the monastery to the manufacturing to agriculture, and then just, even the zoo, instead of just going to the zoo, do a behind the scenes type of thing. So we're actually working on something right now where we can send those out to our convention planners and say, these are the kind of things we'll have on there, what days it's available, what times it's available, if there's a cost. And so that's kind of how the existing business, we plan to grow that. We just have had a lot of interest. I had a group in doing photo and video last week. Lawrence and Schiller was here, and they had two guys along and did some great stuff. And every time I entertain visitors here, they always say, this is such a great place. I had no idea. And so either we're doing a really poor job of inviting them, which is kind of what my goal is next year. I mean, my travel schedule will be very full, and that is where we come with needing to add some staff too, so that we have enough help back
Okay.
in the office.
Well, thanks, Julie. Wonderful. All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. I'll just kind of fill in the rest of the BBB if nobody else has any other questions for Julie. Okay. We'll kind of go back up to
Thank you.
the top. Thank you, Julie. That is all for the event center. That's the utilities, the equipment maintenance, and kind of similar to what we had in the past. And then if you go down to the subsidy for the Boys and Girls Club, I'll address that for you, Mike. Basically, per the agreement, that number is adjusted annually by the CPI that the state puts out to the county. Unfortunately, for 2017, the CPI is 0, and so there was no change. That is also the CPI that we go by to determine our property tax levy. So that's why when we get to that point, you'll see that our property taxes are only going up by growth because there is no CPI for 2017. So that's why the number remains the same. The other one is the transfer out to the Park and Rec. That's another authorized use for the BBB, and that's been $50,000 for quite some time. And that's used as part of the subsidy. And so does anybody have any questions on any of the rest of that for BBB?
Just a quick one here, in the 2016 budget, under the miscellaneous revenues, is that a transfer out, or what is that?
What are you looking at?
Under your miscellaneous revenues for 2016 current year, that number is 50,400. Now, this year it drops back down to 1,200.
Okay, for 2016, the budget for the 50,000 was, I think we were going to do a branding study for
Is
7.
that what that 50,400 is?
Yes, and it was for the revenue coming in to partner with that, and I'm not sure that is something that we're going to continue doing, so it's not in there as an estimated cost or revenue. Yep. Any other questions on the BBB? Okay, if not, we'll move on to the next page, which is the contribution to external organizations. There was a 3-member group that met. I believe Beth Manty, Dan Albertson, Glenn Vilhauer. Each one of these organizations came in and did a presentation on what their request was and how they were going to utilize those funds within the community. And then they came back with a set of recommendations. The 2017 request is what they came in and actually requested, the organizations. The mayor's budget reflects, for the most part, the recommendation by that three-member committee. And I think the couple changes to the mayor's proposed is there was a decrease in the dive rescue of $3,000, and then the resource center was an increase of $4,000. And I think that was the only two changes that you made to
That
what
is-
the committee had actually proposed.
That is correct. yeah.
Okay, so if anybody has any questions about any of that, you can address that to the three committee members who listened to the presentations or to the mayor on any of the two changes that he made.
Last year, didn't we have an additional money that which one is it here, the transit got?
I think what happened
Or
was.
were they talking that, where they wanted that to be like an
if you wanna
annual
address
change?
that,
Or
Ken. One of the things, and I might, before you go, it was interesting that in all the years past that I've been, involved with this, the transit has always come to us early in, like May, June, and had asked that we know how much we were giving them. They did not ask us that this year. They didn't need any type of a letter, so it is, it's just in the budget. I just wanted you to understand, because they had asked early on that.
That's part of that, because I told them not to ask for any more. I mean, that was substantial, or would keep us within our budget, so we'd planned on that. Also, I don't know, I thought at that time that during that meeting, they had asked for the additional 10,000 that, I think it was Mike that recommended for buses for next year, that we put that in early. I see that's not in here.
No, I don't think it is.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of alluding to, I thought the conversation was.
That we
that they
wanted them
wa-
to
that
ask
he
for that
wanted
ahead of time, so.
That he figured he'd be coming back
Right.
annually.
The thing
so-
that, I think why we did not put that in there, I think they have to come back anyhow, and if we actually put it in on the budget, I felt as though the feeling would always be, well, the money's there, it's gonna happen, the council's already approved it. I would like to see them come back in. We can always use our contingency funds for that. That's kind of where I'm at on it, you guys. I don't know if you're comfortable with that or not, but.
I'm
just
totally
seems-
comfortable with that being on their board, and also,
Yeah.
just so you know, I think, for what I think the 10,000 we asked extra this year, we're probably gonna use only about half of that when the buses come in, so.
So I think when and if they need that, I would prefer they come in front of the council. Then it's on your mind, it's there, you can ask questions. If it's in the budget, they probably aren't gonna ask those questions.
Just a comment as part of that committee, I'm not opposed to what we've got here, but I think in defense of what was presented to us, we in effect directed them several months ago to come to us with one figure rather than an amount now and then a subsequent request. So they were doing what we had directed them to do.
That is absolutely correct, yes.
Okay, any other questions, concerns? Okay. We will move on. The next page is Police Department. And Scott Lee, okay, didn't see you back there. Oh, thought maybe you you had ditched us. Okay, so for Lee, we have the Police Department, Animal Control, and 911. So we'll take them one at a time, and then we'll kind of stop and ask questions. And his detail starts on the third page. So if you just want to start and just go through the police department, and then we'll do questions. yeah.
All right, well, good evening, everyone. In for a little bit of a long night here, I see. But before I start, I did want to let all of you know that we took our budget very seriously this year, as we have every year. This is about the 5th year I've been involved with the budget for the police department. I put together a team because I don't want to do it all by myself, and I think it helps to have some input from your staff. So Connie Cutler, my administrative assistant, helps a lot. Tim Toomey, the assistant chief, helps a lot, and also Scott McMahon, my captain. And he oversees the 911 center, so he's integral in that budget. And Tim oversees the animal control line, so it's pretty integral that he's involved with that. So I did have Scott here tonight if you had any questions when we get to 911. But just real quick, going through the items here on your proposed budget book. That first page there, it's 39 on mine. I think that's probably what your page would be too. You can just see through some of the accomplishments throughout the year. Our service calls stayed about the same. Tickets, warning tickets, parking tickets, there was some fluctuation there. Drug arrests look like they're going to be maybe down a little bit. However, we are seeing some more serious drug arrests, more than just the marijuana. We're seeing more meth arrests. So those numbers may be a little deceiving. Overall, they may be down a little bit, but we are seeing a few more of the harder drugs coming through. So just wanted to point that out. On page 40, you can see the budget summary. Beginning with the salary adjustments and health benefits, you're going to see those with all departments. So those numbers there are just Shelley prepares them with her staff. The computer maintenance line, we were able to drop that $5,000 for next year, so we're going to have a little bit of a cost savings there. Our equipment maintenance, we did ask for an increase of $2,300 because of some maintenance contracts we have and some obligations we have out there, and plus it'll leave us a little bit for ongoing equipment maintenance that you don't plan for, that just comes up. The motor fuel and lubricant line, you can see we decreased that $5,000, and that's thanks to our nice gas prices that we hope hold for another year or several years for that matter. And then in the K-9 program, we also did decrease that line just a little bit to be more in line with what we actually expended the last couple of years. And then moving down to the capital purchases, you can see we have asked to replace 4 patrol cars. That would be 2 cars and 2 of the SUVs. In meeting with Shelley and the mayor, they determined that they would like to see those 2 SUVs go to other city departments. So one of them will be going to engineering and one of them will be going to building services. The other 2 cars will remain with the police department. We use them as travel cars or detective cars. We try to get as many miles out of them as we can. The next one you'll see there is the purchase of body cameras. We have applied for a grant through the state's drug fund. And when Marty Jackley was in town last week, I did visit with him on that. They're planning a meeting in the next month or two and go through and disperse those funds. He says he knows it's there. He knows it's a good cause. We've done everything on our end. You have to get buy-in from your state's attorney. You have to get buy-in from your city council. And you have to have a policy prepared before they'll distribute that money. So if we're fortunate enough to get that, that'll go back in on the revenue side of things for the PD budget. So with Shelley's recommendation, leave that in there. I do think we need those cameras. And if the fund wouldn't purchase them for us, the CIP fund would. So I think it's an important thing that we need to have. The next line there is replacement of computers and printers. Spencer and his IT staff have been great to work with. They've inventoried and went through all of our computers. We know what we have. They know what we have. We're recommending 3 replacements next year, along with a network printer that we use for the administrative side of the building. We all network to it, and we have 1 printer instead of 10 at every table. We have just 1 that we network, and it's a good quality printer. We try to get as many years out of them as we can, and it's a recommendation through the IT division that we replace that. So that's on there. And then the last capital purchase item is purchase of firearm. We've got 1 rifle that we need to replace, and so we've budgeted in the CIP for $1,000 for that. Other than that, just the bottom of the page there is summary of personnel. We're not looking to add any employees this year, so I guess with that, I would open it up to questions.
I wanted to mention, if I may, on the cameras, because we have seen things that have come in front of us that we've had to look at, different instances, and they have been very beneficial. I think it just kind of protects you guys.
Yes.
Lee, on the purchase of those cameras, and that would include the software and everything for the storage?
Yes, that includes the cameras and the first year of maintenance and support replacement costs. Yep.
What's the typical yearly cost for the maintenance? And
the ongoing yearly cost after that's about $13,000 a year, and that includes all storage, all maintenance. If you have a camera that breaks, you send it in, they send you another one. It was as high as $20,000 one time. We whittled them down to $13,000 based on our storage needs And it's just, you don't have an employee that has to do any of that. It's just automatically download at the end of a shift, and then when you need to send it to the state's attorney's office, it's just a click of a couple buttons. Right now, we've got a records person that has to go in and burn that to a CD and wait for it to be done and then send it over across the street. So I think we're gonna save some man hours too by going with this system.
You guys have been testing some of them, haven't you, if I'm
We've
not
been testing them
mistaken?
for almost 2 years now.
Yeah.
And we're pretty convinced the one we need, a lot of departments are going with, it's the Taser Axon, and it just looks to be the way to go. A lot of departments are going that way, they're tried and proven, and they're really quick turnaround and replacing and fixing things.
Okay.
Lee, one of your guys gave a presentation at Rotary a couple months ago, and was asked if there's any wish list that he had in mind. He mentioned a drone. Is there anything in the budget for?
Actually, we have a drone now, Glenn, so if you want us to fly over your house and see what you're up to, we can. But yeah, we actually had an opportunity through a grant, basically, that we could get one of those, and we did about a month and a half ago, and we've got a couple officers that are kind of getting used to how to fly that. So we actually had it flying above the building during our National Night Out and got some nice video above there.
Lee, when we talk about the K-9 program and the cost, are those costs strictly associated to the dogs and their upkeep?
Yes.
Okay, so it's purely the maintenance and whatever with
The
them.
food, the
Do we
vet
have how
bills.
many, 2?
2.
Okay.
Yes.
Is there, I'm starting to hear more and more and more from within our community about concerns over drugs. And I think it certainly is more prominent today at a higher level, like you mentioned, the meth probably being one of the bigger ones, than what it's been, and it seems to continue to grow. I think it's a great threat to our community because it creates other problems, whether that be thefts or break-ins or fights or whatever it is. But from a resource standpoint, is there anything that our department would use and need to be more effective in the line of addressing the issue with drugs within the community?
Well, I think the biggest thing is manpower, Mike, and I didn't feel that was necessary to put in for an extra employee this year. I talked with Marty Jackley when he's here, and I've also talked with some of the directors out at the DCI, and we're hoping that they can fund another agent for our area that could help us with this. The one they have in town now spends a lot of time north of us in the Siston area. He's got an area to cover, and so we don't get as much work out of him in Watertown proper as we'd like to. We have one dedicated full-time drug officer and detective, and then we've got one that kind of helps out part-time along with all of our officers doing their daily duties. So the biggest thing I think would be is if we had another officer or if we had more resources. We've talked with the director of the DCI about a task force for the area, and we visited with some other area police departments, Madison, Brookings, Aberdeen, or Siston, kind of try to do like an 81 corridor type task force. And they're all agreeable, so we're kind of working, putting those things together. We may have to, if they would put an agent here, we may look at giving them a space in our building. We've got some meeting rooms that we could possibly make into an office for one of them if they can authorize another employee. So those are all things we've been working on.
If I may, I'd like to just mention also, I had a meeting with Tribal Chairman Dave Flutie last week. Doug Kranz and I went up there discussing some things. And one of their biggest concerns with the tribe is the use of methamphetamines and the trafficking, where they're coming from and what they're doing. I think there's going to be a real working relationship between the tribe and the city of Watertown. And I think we need to nurture that and
Absolutely.
get involved with the tribe up there because they want to stop the traffic that's coming from the north to the south. And I think we've opened that door, and I think it'll work really well. So
I agree.
that's going to be a real positive step, I think, that you guys can use.
Yep.
Lee, to what extent do the canines assist in that whole process? I know they're pretty remarkable in what they can do, but does a third dog benefit us, or is 2 kind of where we're at that we can manage?
I think 2 is a manageable number right now, Mike. I mean, they basically are with them all day. They're kind of a duty dog. They're out doing the patrol thing. They're stopping vehicles. They're making interdiction stops. They get call out sometimes. We have a search warrant, or if we have a vehicle coming through that's possibly hauling something, they come up, they follow them, find a reason to stop them. If they got a headlight out, tail out, whatever, they deploy the dog. Those type of things. So I think 2 is a pretty manageable number for us right now. I haven't thought of adding a third one, but I can certainly visit with some of our guys and see if that's something they'd be interested in.
I'm just, I think that not knowing what conversations you and the mayor and your department have had in that regard, but I think that's something that, if it's resources, then we need to know about that and make sure that we can put those resources to that, because it's
Absolutely.
not getting any better, I don't think.
I think this is my
appreciate that.
annual question about, I look at the number of patrol officers for the last 1, 2, 3, 5 or 6 years, and it hasn't changed, but we know that the environment that they're working in, the amount of people in the city, the drugs, as Mike was saying, and some of those, is it enough? I mean, I don't want to mess up your budgets and stuff, but I
hear what
ask
you're
it
saying,
every
Beth.
year.
Yes, I hear what you're saying. And we've been fortunate enough the last couple of years, I'm going to knock on wood, that we've kept a pretty good force. We haven't been down numbers. Right now, we're technically down 2, but they're hired, they're in training, they're close to being out on the street. So if we can keep our numbers pretty stable, we look pretty decent. We have 6 per shift, and then if you give a vacation or something, you're down to 5. So that's a pretty reasonable number. We've looked at possibly adding some over the years, but looking at a year where we wanted to keep expenses down, we were asked to keep our budget down, so I just didn't apply for any this year. But it's certainly something we'll be taking a look at through the course of next year into next year's budget.
If you look back at the page before that, the volunteer hours in the both the reserve and explorers, I'm sure has helped you dramatically, so
Absolutely.
those numbers are way up. So those are great programs I think we need to also recognize. And
Yes, they
and
are.
I know,
Bring that up.
I know it only takes one drug dog to scare the heck out of you, so.
Any other questions about the police department?
I've got one question for you, Lee, out of over here this way.
Yeah.
Curiosity, what is our turnover rate on, as far as patrol officers go?
I don't have a good number for you on that, Bruce. I know we lost one last year, moved back to Minnesota where he was from, took his wife and his new baby back there, and then we had one the year before, so it's been pretty reasonable. Prior to that, it was 3 or 4. I mean, there's a couple years where we had 3 or 4, and they're all different reasons. I mean, we document who comes and who goes and why they leave, and it's just a varying amount of reasons.
Don't you
Thanks.
typically get a group, it seems like you get a group that retire all, 3 or 4 at the same time?
That's the way it used to be, Randy. I mean,
Yeah.
I remember when I started down there, was about 4 retired about the same time, then a couple years later, it was 2 more, 3 more, and absolutely.
So that's kind of broken up a little bit better than what it
Little
used to be?
bit, yeah.
A fun question, and maybe Connie knows it better than you do, but I noticed that you had the 11th annual Camp Chance, which I think is absolutely amazing, and I've worked there several times. 163 kids this year. Do you have any idea how many have been touched by that over the last 11 years?
Yeah, I would say it's a large number. If you took, I think we've been averaging about 140 some kids a year, and this, I think 163 was our most. So if you do the math, you're talking 1,500 or so people. Absolutely.
Any other questions? Otherwise, we'll move on to animal control. Lee, if you
Okay.
want to go through that real quick.
Absolutely. Last year was our first full year back with the full-time animal control officer. We started out the middle of last year, July through the end of the year, and then all this year. So a little over a year now that we've had him going. So it's been a great service, I think, to the Watertown community. He's been able to get involved with a lot of different things, from just helping us with some of the storage issues with the campers and the boats and those type of things as a community service officer, and then also animal control. You can see the numbers there. He's issued a bunch of parking tickets. He's responded to some animal calls. We've had some wild animal things. We've had dog bites. Education hours is one thing we want him to concentrate on more next year, so that's one of the things we put in for a goal, get out there and try to have some educational thing with the youth and some of the adults of our community. And then the last thing on his list there is just the number of traps. He deploys traps around town to try and catch skunk and badger and those type of animals that are a nuisance and can be a problem in the city limits. So that's kind of some of the things he's been up to since the last year. On the next page, 43, I believe, get these glasses back on. You can see that the only change there really was the salary adjustment health benefits, which you'll see across all the departments. Capital purchases, we are looking at a new vehicle for next year. We want to replace that van, which is a little over 100,000 miles on it. It's been having a few issues. We've documented a few issues, but vans are kind of getting to be the thing of the past when it comes to animal control. More and more departments are going with pickups with a box on the back, so you can keep yourself distance from the animal. It's not just right behind you with a screen between you. It's actually in the back in a box. So we did budget for a vehicle, and in visiting with the mayor and Shelley during our budget hearings, they did ask me to look for a used one when the time comes, and I can look for a used one. I have been kind of looking around to see what's out there, and you really don't get a very good used vehicle for that amount of money. So I think we'll be looking next year to see what's out there. You just never know if you don't look. But that price for a new one is pretty reasonable. So we'll be looking for that. The animal control storage compartment, that's an aluminum box that would go on the back of that pickup. It has 4 boxes, 2 on each side, and has some storage for equipment. We did include a lift, which is basically the side pulls out hydraulically, or I think it's controlled by a cable, drops down to ground level so you can get the animal in the cage on there, and then you can lift it up and slide it inside. So we want to do something. There's some bigger dogs we have to deal with, and we didn't want our animal control guy having any back issues by trying to lift these big, heavy animals up into there, especially if they're not real happy to be going in there to begin with. So, and I guess that's it for that budget.
And what I also
Entertain
did,
questions.
if you remember, the car that you have now for animal control, we're giving that to the zoo so they can use that,
Right.
that piece of equipment out there.
Yep.
They actually, you guys will notice in the budget that the zoo was requesting a new vehicle. It was just to haul some minor stuff around, and we thought this was still.
It would work good for that.
Would work very well. So
Sure.
that's the game plan. We're giving them this animal control car.
Very good.
Lee, got a quick question for you.
Yeah.
I got to know. We've got. I noticed we're up about 30%. You're looking at projected for tickets, for parking tickets. Any reason? I'm curious as to why that would be. From 2015, we went from 785. We're looking at about 1,100 is what you're projecting.
Are you talking back on the PD budget now?
Yes. Mayor's mad at me now because we're
Through a curve.
backtracking and he wants to keep this thing going. So
Parking tickets. And you're asking why we went from 785 to 1,100?
yeah, I'm just curious. That
Okay.
seems like quite a jump.
Yeah, I think the biggest reason is we had about 5 snow events last winter, and it seems like every time you have a snow event, it's 80 to 100 tickets. So if you have a winter where you have those marginal snows, I mean, people know when it's 8 inches, they're going to get plowed, but when it's 2, 2.5, some drifting, they just don't get the sense that they're going to plow their street if it's blown off of their portion, and so we just see more. And I think the addition of the animal control officer, too, I think his numbers are probably in there, too. Yeah. Anybody else on animal control?
Okay. And we'll move to the 911 fund.
Okay, on the 911 fund there on page 45, you'll just see some of the list of accomplishments and goals we have set there for our division. You can see down below some of our performance measures, the staff training hours. One of the things that you see a big increase is EMD, EFD stuff. EMD is emergency medical dispatching, and EFD is emergency fire dispatching. So we've been doing a lot of testing on those to make sure that they're doing those correctly. And so you'll see our number for scores, number of quality assurance presentations scored has gone up quite considerably from 2015 because we have a software, so we can more easily go in and monitor some of those things. And plus, we've got 2 people that can go through and score those. So it's kind of why some of those numbers went up. You can see the amount of 911 calls we take. We listed it out by county there for you, so you can see that. And then, of course, the total down at the bottom. On the next page, 46, you can see the budget summary. Personnel services, you can see there's an adjustment there for the cost of living increase. And we do have a little bit of an increase there in our maintenance contracts. We go through every year, we see what we've got for maintenance contracts, what we need to keep, and we needed to increase that by $5,000 to meet all of our computer maintenance agreements, plus to have some that's set aside if we have issues throughout the year. So we feel like that's a pretty comfortable number. Capital purchases, you'll see we've got a few things there. We're going to try and replace some computer monitors. They're about 6 years old now. They recommend that 5 to 6 year replacement period. These computer monitors are on 24/7, so they get a little more use than just your normal household one or office complex. So they are on 24/7. We're looking at replacing our batteries there's a big UPS unit that backs up our center if the power goes and glitches. It keeps everything up and running until the power can be restored or the generator kicks in. They've recommended we replace those batteries this year. We held off this year. We get a report from that machine. It's a machine that's basically a computer, and it sends an email to Scott and some of the people that monitor that equipment, and it tells them where our batteries are at. And they said we'd have no problem getting through this year, but we should budget for them for next year. So we're going to kind of wait and do that towards the end of next year, but that's why we budgeted for it. The next thing there is the address point layer. What that is that's the mapping system for the 911 center. Right now, addressing is done by the road centers, which means out in front of your house and your road, there's a dot that would show up on our map. And that dot doesn't necessarily tell us which of the couple houses that it's around. If you go with the road center, I mean, there's more to this. I'm just making it kind of simple because that's how I work, simple. If you go with the address point layer, it'll put the dot right on top of the house. And if you're talking about a duplex or a fourplex, it would put 4 dots or 2 dots on those houses, and you would know exactly where you're going. So that's what that's for. That would be through First District. That would be the entire county of Cottington. We found out quickly when the state started doing their update to the 911 system that most cities are address point layer. They're not road center line. Why Watertown never was, or Cottington County, I don't know, but we think we need to get us up to speed there, so that's why we've included that in there. And then the last item there is just mounts for those computers. We're going to add a monitor. That's why we've asked for 16, so we're going to add a monitor. So we need a quad of 4 mounts, so you can mount them up, 2 up here and 2 down here. So that's what that's for. And then as far as the summary of personnel, no big changes there. We're going to stay at the same amount, 13.30.
I would like to, if I may, it is a concern of ours as a city when you start seeing the other financing sources. You know, that's basically a subsidy from the city that we put in there. You know, and it's gone from $180,000 out of the city's funds to $200 to $300 to now we're looking at $350. Some of the things we are looking at, and one of the biggest concerns that I think the E911 has is coming forward is the sunset date on the $1.25 subsidy on the telephones. Right. So we have had, or we are opening, in fact I did today, had a chance to visit with some of our legislators and ask them to really put that on the front burner because this is going to affect every PSAP that's out there.
Right, it
and
is.
It's a huge concern.
Does.
So one of the things also that I think that I know talking with Scott and yourself on this is that we need to start opening up some communications with counties. If we're not going to have the funding through the $1.25 that's going to do this, we need to look at other counties and say, you know, what would it cost you to have this in your city? Would it cost you more than $75,000? Do you need to kick in a little additional? Because it is a big cost for the city to run that 911 center. So I just wanted to bring you guys up to speed, what our plans are, what we're looking at, and how we can, because when the sunset goes through, if it doesn't change, it goes down to 75 cents rather than $1.25. It would be a huge burden upon the city.
It sunsets at $1. It doesn't go back. It goes back to $1 from $1.25. So yeah,
but that would put a huge burden on the city.
It could put a little more burden on the city. And as you had asked, we did reach out to other cities and counties to see how they're doing. They're all about the same boat as us. I think we're probably better than most. We visit with a couple counties that were smaller than us, less people, and they're actually paying more than that as a subsidy to the center. So one of the things I visited with Shelley on and too, and you were in the room when she mentioned putting that extra $50,000. There was more to keep a positive cash balance, because by the revenue coming in, we did increase all of our contracts to 100%. I think we've got most of them back. We've got a couple that are still coming, but we're going to start getting 100% of all the counties' participation. We started out 80, 85, 90, 95. Now we're asking for 100%. We've got some of those contracts back, so that's going to help us some too.
And then, of course, we did open conversations with the county also on that. We had the sheriff in and yourself, and instead of them giving 100%, what they would like to do is kind of what we're looking for. They want to say, okay, so for their budgeting process, they can put X amount of dollars away in their budget, which would come back into the 911 center.
Yep.
I know one of the problems is even if it stays at the 100% of the $1.25 today, is the actual total number of cell phone users in South Dakota is pretty flat. So people are buying new phones as they replace them, but that we're not getting new users. You know, somebody comes in, uses it, somebody dies on the other end. Well, that's true. So that's about the only time you give up your cell phone, right? Is when you. But
I'm taking mine with.
You know, that unto itself, even if we continue the $1.25, we're in trouble because we're already seeing the effects of that. And unless there's something that goes into place that either gives us some kind of an annual increase that's built into that, we're gonna struggle. I think when I first came on the council, I think we were subsidizing about 160,000. Well, we're at 350 coming into this next year, and that's,
And I
That's
think what we're seeing,
significant.
Mike, is the cost of pay and all those type of things goes like this, but that $1.25 stays stagnant. So that's one of the things we're gonna have to work with our legislation. And I think most of you probably know, but I do sit on the state's 911 task force, the committee. And so that's one of the things we're studying. We've got an attorney on staff that's gonna be drafting some stuff for us to try and get before this legislation too, because the state's new system can't fund itself more than about 3 or 4 years unless they state $1.25.
It
And
isn't,
eventually that will go the other way too.
isn't the state takes a portion of that $1.25 now,
Yes,
though,
they
right?
do.
I mean, that was the change a few years ago. And you're saying that that's not sustainable for them either if they
Right,
lose
if it
that.
goes back to $1, their portion becomes smaller, and then it gets gone. It gets spent up a lot quicker, and it goes in the red.
So out of that $1.25, what do the counties get?
87 cents.
And the rest goes to the state?
Right.
Has Cottington County come around with, I mean, are we on board with Cottington County as far as the new assessment amount? I know there were some issues with them when it was first proposed.
If I may,
Sure.
that's kind of what I was just alluding to, is that we had opened the discussions with the county, and I think instead of going to the 100%, they would like to put in a dollar amount that they can fund and just, they can budget for that.
Mhm.
So I think that's where that's going to go.
Sounds like it.
Any other questions for 911? Okay, thank you, Lee, very much.
Thanks, Lee.
Okay. Next page, we'll start with fire, and we'll do the same thing. We'll take fire first, and then we'll go through ambulance, even though it's kind of the same department, same staffing. We'll kind of go through one at a time. Okay, are we ready? All right, go ahead, Doug.
Thank you, everyone. As Shelley mentioned, we both have fire and EMS, the ambulance and the fire out of the same, we operate out of the same building. 2 fire stations, one at the airport and one right down the road. And it's the same staff. We run 3 11-man shifts. As we prepare our budget, we split the cost up between the fire and the ambulance. Don Rowland is here tonight also, and as with the police department, he's a big part of my budget process and helping me through that. So with that, on the fire side, we run about 400 fire calls a year, and we also provide fire prevention to the and fire response to the city of Watertown, 9 townships. We also provide protection to 2 villages, adds up to about 350 square miles. And so that's what we provide service. And we also have state response teams in conjunction with the Department of Homeland Security. We also provide assist in ARF protection out at the regional airport, and amongst a few other things. Some of the accomplishments and things that we've been working on over the last year is one of the big things I'd like to point out is we're in the process of working on a burn tower. This will be built out of Connex containers. It will be out at the regional training center. We're in the final stages of that with funding and things like that. That is in partnership with LATI. It's a very neat concept. It saves a lot of money. Over the years, we were looking at a commercially made burn tower, which is very expensive and a little bit out of our reach without any grant dollars or anything like that. So working with this, the funding, we've had some partnerships with our community as well, providing the funding for that. So that will hopefully be all approved and the funding and stuff, so we can kind of start taking shape on that later this fall. So we're working on that. About the only other thing, we've had a really good, we've had a lot of classes out at the training center, helping to offset those costs of the maintenance fees and things like that, working with other city departments and things. One thing probably we have to work on a little bit is the appearance of the training center. We got a little bit of work to do there. hiding some of these props and this equipment and stuff, and making sure everything's painted up, cleaned up, mowed, looks nice, and painted up. So that's some of the things that we're looking at working on in the future. So we're pretty excited about that. The other thing that we've started moving into is the new G1 air packs. We're taking a truck at a time, and that's a new wireless air pack, along with some new Motorola radios that are Bluetooth capable. The nice thing about that is the wires aren't going from your radio up to your headset, and as you're crawling through a tight area in a confined space or a fire, these wires can catch up and entangle your firefighters. So we are phasing out some of our old air packs so we can take full use of the current equipment, and as these are coming due, we're replacing a truck at a time. So we'll have a lot of the old air packs yet on some of the older equipment moving into the next 10 years before we're fully on to the new G1s, but they will be on all the new trucks. And the other thing we worked on this year is the apparatus replacement plan in the fire side. And what that is we developed this. It's a working plan within our department that we take all of our equipment, all of our fire equipment, ambulance equipment, all of our apparatus, if you will, and we try and see what we have and what we think we'll need into the future, and we put them all, document them all down on paper. We also put the life expectancy of that piece of equipment and kind of lay it all out and kind of see what we really need and what our goal is to, when this piece of equipment moves into the 5-year plan, capital plan, that we are very prepared and that know exactly what we want and need, and as things change, this is a working document, so it's kind of a neat plan, and it's really helped our department make sure we're always ready to and research to the best of our ability. The other portion of that is the funding, and that can be funded in different ways. There can be a special fund set up where it's set aside. It can be in a different fund, and to that portion of the funding is really not as important to me as making sure I'm very well prepared when this piece of equipment comes down the way into the 5-year plan, that we are ready, and that's exactly what we want, and that's what we need. So that's what we've been working on, and I think we've shared copies of that, and that'll change from year to year, but that we have, if anybody doesn't have a copy and wants it digitally or other. The other things that we're looking at going into 2017 a little bit is we've been working on a grant with the storm shelter. That will be out at the soccer complex. We have not officially got the grant yet, but we did get a state approval, and right now it's sitting at the FEMA level. So we should hear whether we'll get that very shortly, and working on that. We're hopeful we get that, and probably start planning on that this late fall if we do get approved, and with building probably in the spring. The other thing that we started working is smoke detectors within the community, trying to find partnerships to provide smoke detectors. We have a goal of 250 smoke detectors a year. There's some grant money out there from the state level, so we're getting some of those dollars, and they also give us a very good reduced cost for additional smoke detectors through the state, through the company they purchase them from. The neat thing about these new smoke detectors, they have a 10-year battery, and you cannot take it out, so it's kind of neat. And that's the biggest problem with the older homes with the smoke detectors. They take the batteries out, so this is kind of nice, and we really have no restrictions. If we can get 250 smoke detectors up into our community every year, that would be a positive and really show some results, because whether you rent a property or own it, you have access to getting these detectors up if you have none. And a lot of it's in the older homes. It's not the newer homes. It's the trailer homes and things like that don't have smoke detectors. So pretty excited about that. That's about it for mainly our accomplishments in fire. We are also planning on getting a new truck in 2018, so there's a lot of work before that happens that's identified in our apparatus plan, and we want to research that really well to make sure when a truck rolls around we're getting what we need on that truck and not more than we need, and keep the costs down as much as possible because they are very expensive. So moving on into the budget portion on the next page. So yeah, we have basically set up some of our increases on our budget. We have $13,950 in salary adjustments and health insurance benefits. We also have $2,200 in hydrant rentals. Every year they add some additional hydrants, and it goes up roughly that $2,000, $2,500 a year. It's I believe it's $100 a hydrant, and so that's what that increase is.
What's our total cost on the hydrant rental?
I think it's 156, 154,000, 156. Yeah. So that is that one. Equipment maintenance on fire, the fire trucks. It seems like with the computer equipment and things like that, the maintenance goes up at even the local shops with those big trucks. So we're constantly doing preventative maintenance and trying to fight that battle, keeping those trucks ready to perform. Building maintenance, we increased that one by $3,000. That's similar problems with some of the generators and the equipment and on the buildings and stuff. Just keeping up as these buildings are starting to be that 5 and 6 year old range. Some things that we're trying to do to keep those costs in line. One thing that we are looking at is as we can afford it, some of the LED lights that we can put in, especially around the exterior of the building. We didn't have a lot of them bid in, so we've been, as the bulbs burn out, we've been replacing them 1 or 2 at a time, and the longevity of those are going to pay dividends with the electric costs as well as not changing the bulbs. So we're doing those a few at a time as our budget can afford it.
If I may break in on that, I didn't
Yep.
realize you were doing that. You should probably get a hold of the utilities. They will do they'll take a look at your whole floor plan and show you what the cost savings are, what the rebates are that you could get. And so we did that at the event center, and they paid for themselves, in just or they will in just a short while. I would encourage you to visit with the guys out there.
Sure.
Maybe Todd Chambers, just visit with him.
Absolutely. Motor fuel and lubricants, we did lower that $2,000 this year, adjusted that down just because of the cheaper fuels, and very comfortable with decrease in that amount. Also, natural gas, we dropped down quite a bit, adjusted that down to actual cost. We have the unique thing about both of our buildings, our truck rooms have in-floor heat, and that saves us a lot of dollars. So when we estimated these utilities out when the buildings first got built, we estimated them plenty high, and they're both pretty efficient buildings. So we're very comfortable with lowering that. Electricity, we did also drop down a little bit, $3,000. And we did have an increase in phone monthly service. With that one, we have all of our ambulances have data in them now, mobile units and things like that, cell phones, so we can get a hold of the hospital. We got 3 ways to get a hold of the hospital. So basically, a lot of those are cost. With those also, our LifePak 15s also have a modem in there, so we can send up the 12 leads right to the doctor at the hospital and prepare them for the cath lab. So capital purchases a little bit further down in the paper. Okay, we have $15,000 for a thermal imaging camera. Along with our apparatus, we also inventoried all of our major equipment that is expensive, anything from cameras to hoses, amount of feet of hose we have, turnout gear, and the SCBA equipment. We've inventoried all that, and we put a life cycle on them, and so we want to make sure that we don't have extra ones of this expensive equipment that we're not using, and make sure we utilize everything and see what the performance is, and we're going by the manufacturer's life expectancy on that equipment and see where it goes. But we basically know what all we have, and I think in doing this, we know some of our hose and nozzles is starting to show its age. So we're kind of planning this over the next few years to replace some of this, and I believe there'll be a certain number of feet of some of the hose that we won't have to replace just because our inventory is up there, and it's probably a little higher than it needs to be. We want to make sure we can replace those trucks when they come back from a fire with dry clean hose, while the others is drying and being cleaned. But some of this hose is about that 1979 range, so it's been worked good for us, but we need to start phasing some of that out. So we'll have some of that coming through. So let's see. That's about it on the capital purchases. So with that, those are our major increases and for fire. And is there any questions?
Doug, there's a couple of comments I want to make before they ask questions on that. One is, when we were up talking to the tribal chairman, it was interesting that you know, the city is looking at offering some assistance out at Dakota Sioux for how to get out of the hotel safely, how to get out of the casino safely, and some of the equipment that you have, you know, check their fire extinguishers and fill their air packs and do things for them. If you want to just touch on that, and if you would also touch on your advisory committee, I think that's been really good for your department. You know,
Absolutely.
You've got, is it five or six on the advisory?
Yes, we have 4 from the community and 2 council members.
Yeah, and I think that has been just so invaluable for you, you know, to have this kind of an input, more of a vision process to help you go through, because I just wanted you to touch on both those, if you would.
Absolutely. So with the Dakota Sioux Casino, both in fire and EMS, we can provide some additional services. As the mayor mentioned, we can do fire pre-plans, fire inspections. We can do fire extinguisher classes, help them with evacuation plans for their hotel and also the gaming floor. Things like that we can go out there as often as they want and provide some other evacuation training and videos and things like that. On the EMS side, we're not in that part of the budget, but we can also offer those folks things like fill their oxygen bottles. They're looking at trying to get trained in as a first responder out there, and what that will do is when someone gets hurt or injured or sick on the casino floor, they can actually take those folks off the casino floor out of the public's eye, take them back to a first aid room, and then when we come with the ambulance, we go right to that room and they're out of the public's eye and a lot more calmer. They have oxygen back there. We can fill the oxygen bottles for them. If we use identical equipment that they use, like oxygen mask, things like that, we can just replace them so the patient doesn't have to pay twice for something. Also, we can provide them some training in the first responder portion of it to make sure they keep their hours of certification and anything new that comes along. And also, we have 4 older cots, the manual cots when we switch over to power cots, and the value of those cots are about $200. We like to keep a couple in reserve just to have in case something happens to one of the power cots, but we could send one of the cots out there so they could actually put a backboard and a C-collar on the patient and take him back into this first aid room. So they're pretty excited about the fact that we may work together and maybe come up with some sort of an agreement or something where we can provide these additional items at very low or no cost to them at all. So which is kind of exciting, working up a partnership like that with those folks.
Doug, I have a couple questions. On the budget under charges for goods and services, it goes up 15 grand this year, 15,000. What's driving that? What is that?
The charges for goods and services on the fire budget. Some of that is we've seen a increase in our township fees this year. I believe this is a year that's went up. Also, in ordinance now we've started the fire prevention side of things where we're when they fill out a building permit, if they need a sprinkler system or things like that, we have fees set up right on those buildings for plan review, sprinkler systems, fire alarm systems. So some of those come from those fees. And then we also have the user fees, which are for residential fires and things like that. So all those combined come up to that.
It's showing up as an increase for this year?
It's also the money that we get from Cottington County to help service the tribe, the casino as well. And that has, that has an increase in it too, and 2017 is an increase year, so
Okay.
that also added to that.
The only other question I have is under your fire operating expense per resident, that's went up on your average from $46 in 2016 to $52 in 2017. That's about, 15% increase in cost per resident. What's driving that number? I mean, I see what you've got in here, but it seems like a higher number than.
Yeah, we just take our budget. However, it's with the salary increases and the hydrant rental and things like that by the number of residents. I believe that's how that's figured out. So I don't have an answer. Actually, finance helps me with that particular number.
Yeah, and if it's just the total budget by the per capita, with more capital purchases and the higher your budget goes, the higher it's going to be per person. So that'll fluctuate per year if you're including the CIP stuff in it.
Chief, I got a couple of line item questions. One of those would be small tools. I don't know what you consider a small tool, but we went from about $1,000 in 14, and we're spending $7,200. It says on small tools.
A lot of that is, if you remember right, we had a other supply line item that was growing, and it seemed like anything that we couldn't find the right budget line item for, we'd put in other supplies. So it's kind of was a catch-all, and so.
Well, we got other supplies here too.
Right, but if that one really
Yeah.
reduced over the last few years,
Okay.
and so we've increased some small. We put some money into safety supplies, some money into small tools, things like that. We're trying to earmark it a little more precise than probably what it was. So a couple of those line items went up due to the fact that the other supply line item went down. So some of the other things that we do have is things like firefighting foam and things like that. And we take that out of that other supplies and at one time. So we're trying to adjust those and try and identify where they really should be going instead of other supplies.
Yeah, it gets to a point where the dollar volume gets high enough to where it needs to be probably spelled out a little bit better. Not necessarily small tools. But the other one I had was subscriptions and memberships.
Mm-hmm.
We're at $4,200. Can you kind of explain that, what
Yeah,
that
let's see,
encompasses? My assumption is it's a lot of memberships for something, I don't know.
We're members of the Firefighter Association at the state level. We're state certified as firefighters. Also, some of those other things that come out of that is our NFPA membership that we pay to get the building codes and things like that. Let's see, Dom, what else is in that fire one?
NFPA dues are about $1,200 a year. And essentially, some of that could be in our EMT stuff.
I think,
Yeah.
unless you're going to tell us exactly what you said, you'd need to come up to the mic then and tell us that, okay? We couldn't hear a word you said, Don. It just.
Sorry, Mayor. That'd be like the NFPA inspection. We have a program that CHIP has. A lot of that could be fire prevention stuff as well that we use for memberships. It runs around $1,200 a year, Bruce. And then we have some inner EMT stuff that comes due. Each employee is around $25 a year to keep their paramedic license. So that's part of that as well. So it fluctuates for the most part, but from that standpoint, that's pretty much what we use for those funds.
Thank you.
Sorry about that, Steve.
So I would like to just mention what the mayor had asked about the advisory, while you guys are thinking about some other questions. Yes, it's been a very valuable tool for my department. They help us with things like the apparatus replacement plan. We want to do a lot of planning for the future, and the advisory really helps us have that vision to see where we're at now, what we'll need in the future, and how EMS and fire and things are changing, and the equipment is changing, and we use them as a sounding board, and it's really paid dividends to my department. So thank you, Mike and Randy from the council, as well as the other advisory members from our community. So.
And it really does help me when you guys come in and you say, okay, we need something for 2018 or 19 or 20 and beyond. So we really understand what you're after, and
Exactly.
we know that it's been worked over.
Yes.
And because you said Mike's on there, right?
Yes.
Those aren't short meetings neither, so.
Chief, I have a question.
Okay.
Well, a question and a comment. I'm glad to hear that you're concerned about the looks of the Western Station out there, where you said you're going to keep track of, because I have had some people say it gets a little shabby once in a while, and the mowing and the equipment out there, after a burn and so on. But secondly, the tower that you're talking about, what's the training that goes with that?
Well, that's basically heat and smoke search and rescue. Basically, that's a portion of it. We can interchange the interior of that as well. We can also do ventilation operations and we'll put a roof up there that we can ventilate with chainsaws and things. So it gives the firefighters a real chance to get into some heat. And a lot of the volunteer firefighters and also the students up at LATI, they don't have a chance to feel that heat firsthand. And there's not a lot of heat. It's really controlled, so it's very safe. But you still feel the heat, and that gives you a good sense of what it's really like in a fire, and not to get panic and get shook about things, and how to train. And the more you train, the better chance you have of getting out of those situations. So there'll be windows and mazes and things like that, and stairwells, and we can switch it up a lot so they can't get used to something. The volunteer departments around our area, very excited about the fact that we have something like that to offer. They've never had that. They can't afford to travel to Sioux Falls, Rapid City, to use these burn towers, and a lot of times they're not invited down there. So for a small fee, we can bring their department in, and they can get those trainings that they need on that burn tower. So pretty excited. It's a little different than the SCBA house because we can spray water in it. We can do those things where we can't spray the water in the search and rescue house. So pretty neat. The only real problem with the training center is we do have some mowing problems with the hills. We didn't really have much of a grass budget, so we're working on some of the really steep parts of it to maybe look at some sort of a natural grass or something that we wouldn't have to necessarily mow, and then some of the other areas cleaning up, and we're working with the city on maybe getting some older mowers that we're not spending a lot of hours on it, and some other planning and stuff, and I think if we get certain areas marked out, the airport would probably help us out if we can have that area very level, and so they don't wreck their equipment. They go right by there. So I think it would work as long as we could say, you mow this, and we make sure there's no rocks and no things like that. So
Yeah, I was going to throw that out. I had it in my notes. You guys will see the cemetery is looking for a new mower and instead of them trading that mower off, it's coming to your department, and you'll be able to use it at both stations, I would imagine.
Yeah, we're mowing at the other station as well and stuff, and we do have one rider right now out at the airport, but there's a lot of property out there that front lawn and stuff, so it's quite an area, but that will help. So that's any other questions?
I just have a comment on the fire, the smoke detector program. I don't know if you know or not, but a couple of your men came through our block, and we have a couple of people on that block that are in their 90s. And so I get real nervous when they're standing on a chair and trying to switch those out. And so they came through and they went through all of our facility, or all of our houses, whoever wanted to do it. They were fun, they were polite, they put in those detectors for some of the elderly people. They checked our smoke detectors and our carbon monoxide detectors. And I guess that I just was so impressed, and they were so efficient and so friendly, and I still have people comment all the time about, oh, those nice firefighters that came through. So, and they like the idea that battery lasts for 10 years, so.
Yeah, I'm very excited about that
Yeah,
detector, so
it's
thank you.
it's a great program, and I just am glad to see that you're going to put that in your goals to expand.
What, how do you plan on funding that, Doug? Is that actually in your budget? I know we visited a little bit, and I visited with Don and
Yeah.
Chip a little bit.
We have a limited dollars in our funds, and what I think we're looking for is somewhere to get to 250. I think they're at 11 or 12 bucks a detector, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll pick up 50 to 100 of those 250 in a grant, depending on if the grants are out there. That's kind of year to year. We can probably grab another 50 or so out of our education and outreach dollars, and then so we're looking for a little bit of a partnership with some sort of an organization that would kind of help us take this on and provide these detectors. So, yeah, it's a neat program, and it will pay dividends to our community. So.
I thought I found that partnership for you, but it kind of fell through, but not saying they won't do it next year, but it was kind of timing. But I think it's a very important part that if we don't find the funding for this year, that I would hope that the council and the mayor would, that's a pretty small amount of money to come back at the end of the year and ask us to make sure that we do fund that, so.
Thank you.
It's a good chance for the firefighters to interact in a positive way with the community rather
Exactly.
than dragging them out of a burgundy building or throwing them in an ambulance. So, not that you throw them, I mean, really, but you know what I mean. It's a nice opportunity.
Okay. If no other comments, we'll move to the ambulance. Okay, on the EMS side, we have, as I said, our staff is all trained both in fire and EMS, and at this time, and we run about 2,400 ambulance calls a year. Currently, we take care of the city of Watertown, the greater part of Connington County, other than the South Shore corner. And with that, like I said, 2,400 calls a year. We have 5 advanced life support ambulances in the city. We use those for transfers and also for emergency response within our community. And we're always staffing them with paramedics. And as of last year, we've upgraded a couple more of our LifePak monitors. So all of our equipment is identical on all the rigs, and we have the thumpers, the CPR machines, and those have really been impressive units. I'd like to thank the council for helping us get those on all the rigs, because sometimes the second and the third and the fourth rig are being called into those situations, and it's nice to have that identical equipment. We did run into one time before we got them before we got the additional ones, that we had to do it manually, and it frees up another man, and it can really do a lot of good for that patient. So it's a great improvement in patient care. The other things that we've done on the EMS side, the public access defibrillator program, We want to make sure that always stays up and running and increases the number of units that we have in our community. And we are working to keep a small grant in partnership with Prairie Lakes Hospital available for those units and get those out to areas. And I believe all the squad cars now have them in. They have had for a number of years. And the police are a lot of times on the scene before we get there. And they're very, very educated and capable of running these units, and it's paying big dividends. So we're doing that. And the only other big thing that we have on the EMS side this year, we're looking at a new ambulance, and what we're looking at doing is researching a possible remount on an ambulance. We have a couple of units that are causing us some equipment maintenance problems. And they have these 6-liter diesels that haven't worked out real well for us. So anyway, long story short, we're looking at what the cost savings would be on looking at a remount, taking our box off and putting it on a new chassis. So we're researching possibility of going to a gas engine, which we haven't had a gas engine in Watertown for quite some time, but that's kind of the trend that's going back to gas. The V10 has been a pretty reliable motor, and the maintenance when they do have a problem, it's not as expensive as the diesel motor. So
Most of your manufacturers went away from a V10 engine and went to a larger V8, so.
yeah, and I did check on that, Randy, and I think must be for the ambulance package. They're still running the V10. So, and they do plan on running that for quite some time, I believe. So that is about it on some of our accomplishments on the EMS, on the ambulance. You'll notice on personal services, our salaries. Let me start up on the goods and services. The $890,000. That's what we collect in revenue for our budget for the ambulance service a year. And we want to make sure that stays very stable. And as Medicare changes come through and stuff, we want to make sure we're always looking ahead enough to make sure that stays stable. With the personal services, that went up a pretty good amount, and that's 80% of our budget is under the ambulance side and 20% is under the fire side, so those numbers are going to be bigger. So that's the 2% salary increase. Some health insurance benefits. We did have a number of single firefighters that did get married and had children over this last year. And also the other thing that we're looking at this year is some part-time EMT staff to try and work some of those students in from LETI or different areas to see if they can provide us some much-needed service to reduce overtime and work and operate safer. We'll be putting them on some times when they wouldn't be going to school if it were a student. Software, we had some software increases, $1,700, and some of those are what we did this year on the EMS side is we went to mobile software, and that has reduced our time on the report writing because a lot of this information transfers right in. Also, it goes right onto an iPad, which is pretty reasonable, and it's reduced the amount of time that the medic has to sit in front of the computer by about 20 minutes a report. So over 2,400 reports, that's kind of nice. And if they go to Sioux Falls on a transfer, they can have a lot of that information entered on the trip down, or when they have a blood pressure and stuff, it'll put it in. So equipment maintenance, our ambulances, we've had a couple of those rigs that have really given us problems, like I had mentioned. Medical supplies always seem to be going up. So we've adjusted that up $1,000. So we're involved in a couple co-ops to make sure we're always getting the best price. Actually, I think we're involved in 2 of them now. So we compare prices and stuff, so we're not locked under any contract. But we buy these supplies in bulk, just along with a lot of other big services, and that saves us quite a bit of money. The employee physicals, we reduced that amount down a little bit, and we're planning on some different changes in what we do with employee physicals. So we were able to save some money there. And then the capital purchases, we are looking at a new IV pump, a couple of stair chairs, which are the chairs that you can bring a patient from the upstairs downstairs without taking the big heavy cot up there. It's a chair that folds right down into a bed and works well in tight corners. We can strap them right in. The other thing is some backboards and splints, some vacuum splints, and the actual backboards are kind of getting old and ragged, so we're going to improve on some of those things. And that is, other than the replacement of the computers, we've got our inventory of our computers over with IT now, and those folks are going to help us with our computer replacement and help us on making sure we're getting exactly what we need with our computers. So that's all I have on EMS.
I have a quick question. I think this is probably for you, Shelley. Out of curiosity, when I look at the group health insurance costs, I look and we see in the negative to maybe 2, 3, 4%. Some of the other. Now, we added another person. I'm assuming that's probably no. Why is it so much higher? Why are we at 17% on with this group? Is it because they're driving an ambulance? I don't know.
No. We always will anticipate a 10% increase in premiums. And then per the union contract, we had a 3-year contract. It started at the city would pay the first $575, and then there was a 60-40 split. And for 2017, that went up to $600. So the city is contributing more towards the health insurance. And then, as he kind of alluded to, if anybody changes from single to family, that almost doubles what the city contributes, and so then that will increase what the city is participating in as well.
So is it maybe it's disproportionate to some of the other budgets with family versus single? Is that
right? The more employees you have, and then for them, police and fire, they're traditionally young. They come in single, they get married, they have families, and so there's a bigger change sometimes for them than there is for others. So
Everybody loves a uniform.
Doug, and the one question I have is on the temporary salaries.
Yes.
Back in 14, we had 14,000. It went down just almost to nothing in 15, and then it was nothing in 16. Now we're back up to 25,000. What's the plan there? What's that use?
Yeah, what we did was we moved to a full-time 40-hour firefighter EMT in was it in 15, 14 or 15, and so we reduced that part-time down to keep the budgets, not from growing quite so much. So we're looking at, instead of adding full-time employees this year, trying to bring this program back and really take another stab at it to see what we can get out of that for benefits and things like that. So
The thinking is that it would reduce your overtime, or?
yes, we would like to see it benefit reducing our overtime, and that's the main goal for trying to bring that back, and giving us some help during the busy times. We can put some staff on, some extra staff during rodeo events and special events and things like that, just to make sure we got another person, and we would train them to be a driver, of our ambulance and stuff, and they're a fully fledged GMT. So we think it'll pay some dividends.
You'll also use this person during peak hours?
Yes, as much as we can. It's a little easier, when they're not. If of course we hire students, paramedic students that are in the field. It seems like their schedules are a little easier to maneuver through the summer and stuff. When we have these special events in the wintertime, we want to use them on the peak hours as much as possible. Mm-hmm.
any other questions anybody has on the ambulance part? Okay. Thank you, Doug. Does anybody want to take a short break? Do you want to keep going? Should we take a short 5-10 minute break so you can get up, grab something to drink? Okay. So anybody watching, we'll take a short break and then we'll get back at it in 5